Hi. Hi everyone, my name is Holger. Wow, the mixer really did a thing on my voice last night. I'm the UX designer on June's Journey. We are a studio based in Berlin. Wooga is the name, you might have heard of it. Today I want to walk you through the process that we applied to adjust the FTUE of June's Journey. June's Journey has been by now live for 8 years, I think. I would love to steal your disclaimer because it is very complicated. There is a lot of data that I can't share with you. I'm going to brush over some things and try to focus on the research part of that you might probably even find familiar and see how we applied that. So I hope that in case you are facing similar issues, you have a legacy game, have legacy UX, you try to rework parts that you think you cannot touch. Maybe there's something here for you. I found this to be very, very exciting and entertaining. And let's take a gander. I'm just going to use the arrow keys here, right? Yes. You can't make a game without having great people around you. These are my fantastic colleagues that I have the pleasure and the privilege of working with. They're all associated with the research that we did here. And I'm going to, big shout out to them. Without you guys, I am nothing. If we want to talk about the FTUE of June's Journey, and I think there are some people here that have not played June's Journey, so I need to quickly onboard you what this game is, so you then understand what we're doing in order to address the FTUE. June's Journey is basically a hidden object game. I'm maybe going to shorten that with HO in terms of this talk. It's a free-to-play game. It's on mobile first, web and on Facebook, and it launched roughly 8 years ago or something, and became Wooga's most successful title. It's our flagship thing. It's been live for a very, very long time, and we're still working on that. In the game, you play as June Parker. That's the protagonist. She's a detective, and she uses her skill of finding things in messy rooms to somehow conclude the crime or the mystery that is currently going on, and you're playing through her eyes. Your job, and this is the core loop, is to scan the scene, find the things that game asks you to find, tap on them, you get points, that translates into score, and that's your hidden object gameplay, very basic. In case you've been playing while I was speaking and couldn't find things, the pocket watch is over here, the camera you need to find is up there, and the envelope is down there. The hidden object scenes are bundled in chapters, so it's always 5 scenes that conclude a narrative arc that you have to play through, then the chapter is completed. Right now you see we're in chapter number 1, we're currently playing scene number 4, and scene number 5 is still locked. The unlock conditions for that is to find 2 key clues in the scene that you're currently playing. Here it's a lock and I think a broken vase or something. And you need to collect 102 flowers. What's flowers? Flowers is part of the meta gameplay. The meta gameplay is you have an island that you decorate with isometric objects, the deco items. Each item that you place not only makes your island more beautiful, it also rewards you with flowers in return. How do you buy these? There's an in-game shop with hundreds of these decoration items. You spend coins there, and you find these coins in the gameplay or in events or like all over the gameplay. Speaking of gameplay and story, there's a lot of content. If you're live for 8 years and you you succeed in delivering fresh content every week. So every week there's a new chapter. Every week there's 5 new hidden object scenes, new story arc, a lot of stuff. And for 8 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, for 8 years we haven't failed once on delivering on that. If you would sit down tonight, install June's Journey and start playing, you could do so for 4 years to reach the content that we're releasing this week. So it's a lot of stuff. But if you make it to that point in the far, far future, heavily depends on one thing, and that is if you come back on the next couple of days. Because if you work in the freemium market, it's not a secret that you lose a lot of players in the first couple of minutes, hours, and days. It's not unlikely to have only 20 to 40% of your players that install the game come back on the second day of your game. And that's also okay, right? We're expecting that, and somewhere between 20 and 40 is healthy, and it's okay. I can't share all the data with you, but here's our retention curve. So on a monthly basis, you see there's an axis missing, I know. So you can see how many players come back on day number 2. I'm so sorry. But you can assume that somewhere in this box, okay, somewhere in this box, there's 20 to 40%. That's our attention, and it's okay, right? Everything looks healthy. It goes up, it goes down. No need to spring into action. And so, looking at this, we spent our time working on features for players that are in the game, that enjoy the game, end of content users, building more features, no expanding the game. However, when we start to compare this curve now with our top peers, our competitors, we see a trend that is happening with sort of everyone else that is not happening for our game, which is the day 2 retention actually goes up. So for a while, we've not been doing our homework of looking into the first couple of days of new players' experience, and this is what I want to talk about today. When facing with the task of addressing something like that in a large game like this, we had 3 main issues that we had to overcome. The first one would be the legacy UX. See, the game that we have built 7 years ago had a very specific type of player in mind, had a very specific behavior and experience, and the market was very different back then. Players have changed. They have now new expectations. The market is different, but the FTUE experience that we built is still the same. And I need to correct myself. A game designer just told me that actually there were 3 minor changes in balancing, but that's basically it. We would constantly ask ourselves if we should rebuild this thing completely. What does completely mean? Do we cut large chunks out that probably don't work, or we have a better creative idea? Or should we just focus on little things because it's easier to roll back if it's not working? A lot of question marks, so rebuild or repair. And a lot of lost knowledge. Over the course of this time, a lot of talent has moved on. Right, yes, there's one up there. Of course, documentation is scarce as always over the time, so you can't really find reliable data of why things have been done the way they are done. There are old A/B tests that you can't prove anymore, so you're stabbing in the dark. Really cutting this short here. Our UX designers sat together and we were looking at these problems, and we agreed that we're gonna divide our research effort in order to bring more clarity to the team into 3 main pillars. We would start with a primary research with our current estimated target audience. We would afterwards go into asking the team, because if you have a large team that is dedicated on working on this game, they have insights that you just don't have. Data analysts see the game from a different perspective, the engineers know how the code works, and they all have an opinion of how and why we should change parts in the FTUE. And ultimately, once we have gathered all these insights, we would try to theme them and cluster them, and the idea would be to create a common language that we can use to talk about the things that we want to work on. See, talking to an engineer can be very different from talking to a marketing person, and once we would have something like that, it should make it easier. The primary research. The best part about that, you invite 20 players into a longitudinal study. Big shout out to Playtest Cloud over there for helping us facilitate that. We would ask them to play for 7 days, sometimes 8 days if that fits their needs, and for about 30 minutes a day, ideally in 2 sessions, because that's how our users usually engage with the game. And they would also get a survey after every day asking them how they're doing. We would have questions like, was something difficult for you today? Or what did you enjoy most? Or if this was not a playtest that you're being paid for, would you come back tomorrow and still play the games? So, you know, trying to measure fun here. This creates a language, a ton of data, of course, if you have so many players go through so many sessions. And a big shout out to my UX design colleague, Kirsten, who came up with a strategy to then take all of these input that we got and sort of lay it out in a way that it's accessible for the rest of the team and practical for us to continue working on. I'm gonna show you how she did that, so that's fully her work. She chose a user journey method where we mapped it out in the following way. So first up there you see the story chapters. This is the first 5 scenes, then the story is here conclude. We move up to the next chapter. Up on that one, she would lay out all the things that are happening in the game. So each and every hidden object scene that you unlock, tutorials that happen there, specific elements that are now unlocked, or you get information about something that has been added to the game. And onto that goes the user's journey. You can already tell that it changed how fast players progress through the game. So the day 2 thing is not the same for all of the players. Once we had that laid out, we would bring the observations from the playtest and our own observations from what we would hear them talk about and be frustrated about, and lay that out here. This is simplified. You see these exclamation marks up there and the exploding head emoji. That would be sources of high frustration. And we would focus on that one a little bit more than we would focus on the rest. And you can see it happens around hidden object scene 4 and 5. So something has happened, not necessarily at the end of day 1 or at the beginning of day 2, but something around here where frustration has built up to a point where they would scream at their mobile phone. We compared that with the survey that we handed out, where they were asked on a scale from 0 to 5, how much fun did you have today? And I'm only showing you the 0 response. So around day 3, the not having fun part spiked, and that also overlaps with what data science shows, what we see in the churn curves and so on. So there's more data to back that up. Besides many interesting insights, here are some of the top that we have seen in analyzing the player behavior. The first one would be that there's a big misconception about how the game mechanics work, such as believing they have to keep engaging with specific hidden object scenes because they think, or in their mental model, if I just play this thing enough, something will unlock, something will happen, which is apparently not the case. This would lead to a weird behavior of grinding a scene without getting more rewards, just constantly playing and replaying, but not knowing if something will happen, like in a treadmill. For several players, the unlocking requirements, the thing with the flowers and the clues, was absolutely not clear to them. It would snap back at day 6 sometimes with a big yoo-hoo, I've figured it out now. But on that specific time, they were sitting there trying to unlock a scene, not understanding how, not reading the clues, not understanding how the game communicates to them. The progression, as we saw earlier, it got slower around day 2 and day 3, and that overlapped with the hidden object scene number 4 and 5. So we saw something happening around this area, not just in how fast they can play, but also where they get frustrated. And the consequence is something like, if you have a game and you can't play the game, you get frustrated. And now we want to look at why, what is stopping you, and what are you missing to understand how to unlock the next step in the game to continue. The secondary research with the team. We had 15 plus of our developers, that's just 2 representatives of my dear colleagues, who have contributed here. This includes anything from game designers, artists, UI UX designers. We had some editors joining in. Marketing was part of that. So people working on the game got together to come up with ideas. Ideas in forms of my robots. I think there's at least 4 that are titled FTUE Improvement Ideas Brainstorm, where just stuff went on the my robot. You could just pour out everything that you wanted to maybe see improved in the game. That's tricky, right? Because your developers are not your players. They're here to make the game, not to play the game. They see it from a very different perspective, and if you just unleash that into the backlog now, could be problematic. So when working with your team on something like that, treating them a little bit as if they were playtesters, you always have to keep in mind that it's about their expert insights and not about their perspective as a player. What at least I experienced is that these professionals jump into solution-oriented thinking. That is in itself not a bad thing. It's great to think solution-oriented. It's problematic if you don't understand the problem that you're trying to solve and just be like, let's go, here's what we're going to do. Because if you do that, I saw a big risk of people slipping into confirmation bias, because suddenly you really like your idea, and there will be others that rally your idea, and maybe you are, have some higher seniority, and people think, of course, right, it has to be this and that we're going to do. I personally don't believe that every single decision needs to be backed by research. You sometimes need to trust your guts, because otherwise you're going to be blocked a lot. However, what I'm trying to do, and this is on the next slide, is make sure that we're always addressing the player's needs instead of the designer's needs on this one. Here's an example. From one of the My Rewards, someone posted, there's too many pop-ups when starting the game for the first time. And I see you already have some ideas on how to fix this, right? Get rid of these stupid pop-ups, you would say. However, the too many pop-ups is a symptom of some underlying issue that we have in the game. And we try to break this up by offering a user story with a framework like I have observed or I believe, and then ask you to put in what you just saw. And I think this could be, or I think there's an opportunity for players struggling. In this case, it would like that. Oh, this is tiny. In this case, it would like something like that, where it says, I had to click through 5 different pop-ups to get to play the hidden object scene for the first time. This could be problematic for our players because they want to play the game as fast as possible. You just installed the game, right? You want to play the game and not get distracted. Once we clustered all of this together, we saw patterns here because things started to sound very, very familiar. And our conclusion here was that when we talk about too many pop-ups, what we're actually trying to say is the system is distracting players from playing the hidden object game. Our main observations from working with our team on this one was we assume the cognitive load that we ask them to go through early on is probably too much, or it's the tolerance that is missing to go through this, because people do go through it, just not all of them. We have some inconsistent guidance here. What does that mean? Tutorials sometimes are painfully long or not precise enough. There are unclear feedback loops. Some players reported, and we saw that as well, that something happens in the game, but you're not being made aware of what that means. So something unlocks, but you maybe not have seen it. Or the game tells you, you need to do this now, and you didn't pay attention because you had a different motivation to get engaged with something else in the game. After clustering that all, we tried to create some labels, some vocabulary. It's a long, long list with different peers and different priorities. And I'm going to walk you through, I think, 4 of my favorite. So the first thing that we would have identified as a title would be overwhelming information. That would be moments in the game where the game asks you to adopt more than just one concept at a time, or when there's a huge wall of text for you to read and you just can't be bothered with that. We would have complex terminology. We know our game, and we try to communicate in terms as the game would usually do, but if you haven't learned it or haven't adopted it, it might be problematic. Here's an example. Sometimes the game asks you to open the mastery box to earn sweep the board tickets. What does that mean? What's the mastery box? Yeah, I see. Yeah, what is the mastery box? We have unclear cause and effect. It's a classic feedback loop not being perceived or maybe even broken, where players don't notice that the status of the game just changed, that there's something new being available, or whatever, something happened, I don't know why. And my personal favorite, and we're going to have an example afterwards, is distraction from a goal. When the game asks you to do something, then interrupts you with do something else, and it's not connected with each other. It's not like a sub-quest. It's like, look over there, there's something important to do, but there's also something for you to do over there, and maybe you should go and solve the crime that you're being here to investigate. So what should I focus on first? Let's give this one a look. This is the screen that you get when you install the game tonight and start playing. You will see a big blue connect button, a green play button, and in the top right there's a settings button for you to do. What's your goal? Let's just assume you install this. I think your goal is to play the game. However, you don't have a concept of the color coding at the moment. Is connect, because it's on the left side, the thing that you should be doing now? Should you play? And if you're that type of player, maybe you want to go into settings and change something there. But what the UI here does is not clearly communicate what you should be doing. There's also 2 options, and it's a 50-50 chance, at least from my point of view at this moment, that you do the right thing, which is playing the game. And is this the right thing to do? So therefore, we would use our label saying this is distracting you from a goal. The connect in itself is not bad. It's good. You need it if you have a second account. But in this specific setup, in the FTUE, in the first time you play this game, this could be problematic. And what do you do next? Now you have these labels. You take screenshots of everything in the game. Everything that you know that happens in the first 2 days of gameplay, or roughly until scene 4 and 5. You lay this out on a Miro board, and you start critically going through this, and at each and every scene try to painfully apply what you have just found and highlight every area where you think this could be problematic based on what you learned. And what you do afterwards, of course, try to see if there's something leading up to a problem point in the hidden object scene 4. Because a player won't flip their phone because of one thing that has happened. It's a buildup of frustration, things that you didn't understand in the beginnings, things that took your attention away from something that was important. And then ultimately there's this point where you're like, I had enough, I don't understand it. Okay, a couple of weeks later, a couple of sprints in, maybe half a year, we have built these changes based on what design then made out of these findings. And I have some results for you to share. The goal since November was to measure the success of the changes in our FTUE by 1% uplift after day 7. That's still a lot of people that would survive the first week of playing the game. And we can, it's 3 examples of things that we changed, and we can see if that had a positive, a negative, or no impact on the FTUE. Because, surprise, not every change that you do is something that players will accept. It now looks like this. There's one big play button in the center, the connect button moved up to the right side. If you believe that this had a positive impact, you are correct. Just changes like these. And it's not just this screen, okay? It's not just this screen. There was like a big bunch of trying to reduce distraction all over the game. Had ultimately a day 7 retention uplift of 2.5%, which was absolutely fascinating. We identified that players have issues with the difficulty. Now, if I would have done my homework properly, we would have asked, what does difficulty actually mean? Is it too difficult? Is it too easy? Our guess, because it's also fast to test, is look at the hint button down there. The hint button is if you just can't find the rug on this scene, you can smash that button. It will highlight which item is still left for you to find, and then it would recharge. And we increased the recharge speed 3 times, so instead of 15 seconds now, it's like roughly 5 seconds for you to wait. You can now really unblock yourself. Day 7 retention went down by 2.2%. Maybe because now you just play this thing, you don't have to search anymore. The game just became not a game anymore, just a chore of hitting this lamp. And once this A/B test is being switched off, now everything is too critical and problematic for you. Players not understanding how the loop works. We were thinking about how we can do this, another interactive tutorial, maybe some sort of guidance, and decided to throw a sink at this problem and just be like, well, bluntly, show you this big screen and tell you do A, then go to B and go to C. Day 7 retention uplift by 1.8%. It's so simple and it's so stupid, but had a really great impact on players. Like every number here is someone that will now enjoy your game a little bit longer, someone who's not frustrated, someone who's not gonna open Reddit and write mean comments. So overall, how did we do? After day 7, did our retention be at 1% or maybe even more with all the changes that we did? And we did not. Ultimately ending up at 0.1%, almost there. This is still ultimately, I think, 3 times of all the people living in Antwerp. So Antwerp times 3 now has a better experience for 7 days. That's pretty good. But it's not what we really wanted. My key takeaways from this almost 1 year project that we're working on is, hey, please keep it simple. There's a big drive to over-design and be a little bit smarter and make it a little bit more fancy. But sometimes just a very simple solution can be super effective. The user stories can save your sanity, especially when you work with a lot of stakeholders, when you work with people that are in charge of very important decision making. If you can translate their findings, oh, here's something, right? Here's a symptom. If you can translate that into some form of cohesive language for everyone, it makes your life so much easier. Also, people lose their buy-in into their specific idea if you have something like that. Always include your team. We had Jean-Luc talked about how the new guys join and they have like all the ideas and then you're being excluded from your team. We have to do the same thing. As the designers are the new guys as well sometimes. Sometimes it's the editors, sometimes it's the artists. There will always be the new kid and you want to rake them in, and research is not done in isolation, at least I hope so in this case. Bring your team, they will love it, they can help you, they can give you new insights, and it makes us stop being the weirdos who disappear in the lab and come back. I'm not looking at you specifically because of the lab thing. That disappear in the lab and come back with findings, be like, hey, look at this. And build your own research process, right? There's a ton of great books out there. We learned a lot, and we're still going to learn a lot about how to address UX issues. I try to make it our own thing here, because under all of these issues that we have in the game, everything that's off in the FTUE, the most important thing that we try to address is that we communicate clearly about what we want to do and how we want to do it. And that's it. So thank you for paying attention and sticking through with me here. This is the last talk before the lunch break, so I can take as many questions as you can potentially come up with now.
Wrong about this. But we do have time for questions. We have two similar questions. So could you please tell the reasons why the FTUE, I don't know how people pronounce this, haven't been taught in 7 years? Because it worked as is. What made you look into it? And there's a similar question that was in the past 8 years since release, were there any attempts to change the things? It's moving all the time. Or has it stayed the same all this time?
Yeah. So how could we, right? That's the question. How could we not address this? You only have that many engineers, you have limited budget, and there's always something very, very important to be done. And as you saw in the really well done blue bars presentation about the day 2 retention, it was just not the highest priority for business reasons. So, you know, other things were a little bit more important to that point. It's Hollywood, baby.
How did these changes impact old players?
That's a very good question. So some things we could not touch. The end of round or something is an experience that players have seen for 8 years. You can't touch it. You could touch it for the first few people, but then it would be weird if it suddenly changes into something new after you went through the FTUE. So we tried our very, very best to keep the changes, at least for now, because we're not done. The project is still ongoing. Keep it so that you only see the changes when you are an early player. We would, for instance, if the UI is overwhelming because you have a lot of information that players need at the end of their session 500 or something, but you don't need it in the beginning, we would just take this out and introduce it as something then afterwards. So just reduce in the beginning, not drastically change or add so that everyone has to adopt it. And that's sad as well, because you really, really, really feel like this one thing should totally change. And you can't, because you're doing yourself lip service. It's good for you, it might be good for new players, but actually not good for your loyal fans and your audience.
Great talk. At what point should we give in and tutorialize a mechanic compared to letting players learn mechanics through gameplay?
Okay. Yeah, that's tricky. I think it highly depends on what type of play we're looking at here, because someone who is just learning about your game, someone who just, I mean, it's a free-to-play game. You don't have to pay money. There's no reason for you to stick around. You don't owe us to play this game. It's different when you buy stuff on Steam, and because it's a Steam Summer Sale, and then there are 100 games lying around that you haven't really installed or touched at all. At this point, the entrance barrier is not so high. So when we're talking about tutorializing things, my gut reaction is, would the player have a mental model for what's going on? Adding torpedoes to a battleship makes sort of sense, right? Torpedoes is a thing. Adding a laser, maybe not. So if you have a weird laser mechanic that doesn't really fit what players expect the game to do, then have you tutorialize, probably, and then see if that sticks. But ultimately, is there a mental model? Yes, no. Is it significant enough for enough people? And then throw everything you have at this and see what works. There's just no easy answer to that. And less text.
Did you test all changes in one go? Did you think to release it one by one?
There's a reason this thing has started in November last year and has not ended yet. If you do all changes at once, You might have something that has a good impact, and then something that has a negative impact, and then it equals out, and you don't know what you just did. So we're looking at a lot of segmentation, a lot of A/B testing has happened here, because we wanted to make sure that if the hint is the something that is bad, of course we're going to roll it back. Can we roll it back easily? In which release does this go? Is this something that needs a game team to look at and change, or is this something we can do, in the next config change? So I want to say nothing, but I think as everything was handed out in isolation. That's why it took so very, very long. We want to be careful with these things, and you want to also make sure that the change you do is the right thing to do, and maybe afterwards start improving it. Right? That's the opportunity. We want to have clarity as much as you can about what you add or what you take away from the game, especially in this critical time of the FTUE. Does that answer the question?
Does that answer the question? Sort of. All right, it's time for lunch. But just a quick question. This one should be quick to answer. Did you revert the hint button or continue to iterate on it?
The hint is back to 15 seconds, so that has changed. There might be some A/B tests now with playing around with it a bit more, but there is something with the hint that we want to look at, but it's not going to be the timer. So, hey, maybe it's the visual effects. We'll figure that out as we go. Thank you.